All right, let's go ahead and get started on the annual business meeting. We're certainly glad that people took time out of their busy schedules to attend. I'll assume that we have a quorum at this point. So let's get started. And again, thank you for participating in our first ever Zoom annual business meeting. For those of you that I haven't met personally, I'm Mark Reed, current chair of SAIS. On behalf of our board, we welcome each of you. If you think about this meeting last year at this time, around this time, we were all probably headed to the SAIS annual conference, or we were sitting in the conference. There were three very interesting strands being offered by the SAIS team. And after I read them, you can decide for yourself whether SAIS has some clandestine insight to the future or just what. So we had a keynote. Kathy Pearson was speaking on managing uncertainty, strategic agility. That was one. So there was this notion of managing uncertainty. There was another strand on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the work we do in our schools and what's going on in society. And then the third was intentional innovation. And we had a speaker, a wonderful speaker, Mike Cobb, spoke about time, space, and talent relative to intentional innovation. So we had this innovation that had to be intentional as presented, diversity, equity, inclusion, and then managing uncertainty. And if they didn't do an amazing job of figuring out what we might need to be thinking about at that point in time, I don't think the managing uncertainty was relative to a pandemic, but boy, the fundamentals certainly apply. Pretty amazing. But in all seriousness, this school year has been a challenge. I won't use all the tired cliches we've heard over the past 7 months, but I will say that I'm proud of the manner that independent schools, and in particular SAIS schools, have stepped up to the challenge to continue to meet their school's mission in every way possible. So thanks to each of you for your work in that regard. The work of SAIS over the last 7 months has been the same good work as they've always done, but expressed in a different manner. SAIS has always been about helping support and guide our member schools, and though the method has changed significantly during this pandemic, the staff continues to serve our schools in deep and meaningful ways. They've shown flexibility, adaptability, and patience as they work to support you and your school. In fact, 357 schools of our 384 member schools have engaged with SAIS this year. That includes virtual, physical, pre-COVID, of course, surveys, and accreditation. An amazing 93% of our member schools have engaged with us this year. And I hope we're all thankful for the shared opportunities SAIS has provided for us to learn from each other and from the experts in our field as we do work in our schools across the South and beyond. Deborah, I want to certainly thank you and your team for the endless support that SAIS has provided member schools. Thank you for that incredible work that continues to go on. And now for the approval of the minutes. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the 2019 annual meeting. You can find the minutes linked in the chat or in the email you received in announcing this meeting. Are there any corrections in the minutes or corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes stand as approved. Next, we'll hear our committee reports. Jackie Westerfield, head of Grandview Preparatory Academy, will give her report on the Membership and Accreditation Committee. Jackie?
What I had to read and I forgot to unmute. I apologize. Thank you, Mark. At 384 schools, SAIS is the largest regional independent school association in the nation. Representing 14 states and 3 countries, the SAIS tent is filled with a diverse community of approaches to education. We were excited to welcome a total of 6 new members to the SAIS team in the 2019-2020 school year. The Episcopal School of Nashville in Tennessee, Providence Academy, Leesburg, Virginia, Briarwood Academy, Warrenton, Georgia, Montessori School of Columbia, South Carolina, and St. Vincent's Academy, Savannah, Georgia, and Harbor Oaks Montessori School, Grayson, Georgia. As we all experienced in the 2019-20 school year, the SAIS accreditation process was disrupted by the global pandemic that postponed all accreditation visits as of March 15th. In consultation with the board, SAIS postponed the remaining 29 visits until spring 2021. In addition, all accreditation visits will be moved ahead one full year in order to allow schools time to recover from the impact of the pandemic and at the same time avoid overloading any one semester going forward. We did conduct one hybrid accreditation visit in the spring consisting of 2 days of virtual meetings. That visit will conclude this fall with a one-day site visit by a local team member. Prior to the pandemic interruption, SAIS conducted 50 accreditation visits, with 3 of those being initial visits. On behalf of the SAIS Accreditation Committee, congratulations to the newly accredited and re-accredited schools, and thank you to the chairs and the team members who participated on those visits. SAIS continues to represent independent education and accreditation at state, regional, and national levels, participating in multiple organizations, including Acacia, the International Council Advancing Independent School Accreditation, NCPSA, the National Council for Private School Accreditation, VCPE, Virginia Council for Private Education, TEPSAC, the Texas Private School Accrediting Commission. This past summer, SAIS hosted its 7th annual accreditation summit, the first one via Zoom, where experienced accreditation chairs examined trends that impact schools and therefore the accreditation process. We remain focused on a model of accreditation that combines the needs of fixed-minded compliance with the hopes and dreams of growth-minded aspiration. Each year, the summit serves to strengthen the SAIS accreditation process and keep us at the forefront of independent school accreditation. This summer's summit focused on standards for virtual learning and protocols for hybrid accreditation visits. We continue to thrive because of your dedication. Thank you for your commitment, your service, and your participation. When you're asked to serve on an accreditation team, please say yes. Thank you, and back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jackie. One quick note in there: if you have not signed up or don't have or have not had your school sign up for the annual conference, there's still time to do that. So don't forget to sign up for the conference coming up next week. Thanks again, Jackie. Cliff Clean will give us a report from the Finance Committee. Cliff.
All right. Thank you, Mark. So the financial position of SAIS at the end of our fiscal year, despite all the challenges, was healthy and strong. And again, our fiscal year ends December 31, 2019. The 2019 audit was clean and unqualified, and we ended the year with a positive surplus and continued to add to our reserves. And our revenue streams during the year were as follows. You see them there on the screen: 57% membership dues, 32% professional development, 8% miscellaneous services, and 3% accreditation. And while the current 2020 fiscal year has seen a drastic change in revenue from professional development events, we've also experienced many expense reductions. And we applied for and received just over $224,000 from the payroll protection plan in May, and we've been able to maintain a net operating surplus. And so the year-end forecast is positive for the fiscal year that will end December 31, 2020. SAIS continues to grow in both services and membership, and our financial position is solid and will allow us to continue introducing new programs, services, and other member benefits in the future. And obviously, so much of the credit for that goes to our amazing staff, led by our amazing president, Deborah Wilson. So thank you for their leadership and all of their work. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Cliff. Byron Halsey, head of Woodbury Forest School, the non-bubble school, will share a report on the Committee on Trustees.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to everyone for being here today and being part of the SAIS community. On behalf of the Committee on Trustees, I bring 2 items of business today. First of all, the trustee slate. The first is voting on Kelly Waldron, head of St. Andrew's School in Savannah, Georgia, for a 3-year term of service beginning on January the 1st, 2021. Kelly joined the St. Andrews faculty in 2012 and has served in a variety of roles in her tenure, including Spanish teacher, director of admissions, and director of studies. She holds a BA from Tulane University, an MS from Loyola University, and an EDD from Georgia Southern University. Kelly is a member of the Georgia Independent School Association Board. She's been active locally in Leadership Savannah and Metro Savannah Rotary, and is a co-founder of the Teach the Future Fellowship. This recommendation comes from committee and has been approved by the board, so no second is needed. It has been moved that this slate is approved as presented. Is there any discussion of the slate? All in favor, please say or indicate aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Congratulations to Kelly and welcome to the SAIS Board of Trustees. We look forward to working with you. The second item for the agenda that for the Governance Committee is a bylaw amendment. It is an amendment of Article 4 of the SAIS bylaws to, one, allow non-heads to serve as trustees as long as heads comprise the majority of the board. And secondly, to give the board leeway to appoint individuals to fulfill terms vacated before expiration. You can find the current and proposed bylaws linked in the chat or in the emails you received leading up to this meeting. The specific changes, just to be clear, include number one, that the following sentence would be deleted from Article 4 of the bylaws. Quote, each member of the board must be currently employed as the chief administrator of a member school. That would be deleted. Secondly, the following sentence will be added in its place. At all times, a majority of the SAIS board shall be heads of member schools. However, board members may include, but not be limited to, staff of educational associations, members of the educational community at large, member school trustees, and other such individuals who may fulfill the strategic needs of the association from time to time. The purpose of this, just to ad lib for a moment, is to make sure that our board is complete with, replete with as much strategic expertise as we can get to drive SAIS forward in the years to come. And we can probably all agree that wisdom is located in far more folks in our communities than just the head of school. So this is perhaps a very appropriate step to take, but I'll leave that to your all's judgment. Finally, the following sentence will also be added to Article 4. If the office of a trustee, officer, or committee member becomes vacant, the board may choose a successor who shall hold office for the unexpired term. Fulfilling this unexpired term at the request of the board shall not count against that individual's total terms served on the board. This recommendation with these bylaw changes comes from committee and has been approved by the Board of Trustees, so no second is needed. It has been moved that these amendments are approved as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of these amendments, please say aye.
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 And all opposed, please say nay. Excellent. The amendments have been approved and the changes will be reflected as of today, October the 14th, 2020. Thank you, Chairman Reed.
Thank you, Byron. Again, welcome to Kelly, and these changes to membership of the board, I think, really will add some depth to our trusteeship and really help the organization continue to think strategically about how to best serve our schools in the future. So we're looking forward to that work. Appreciate your report, Byron, and we will now hand it off to our president, Deborah Wilson. Deborah, certainly want to thank you for all the work that you and your team have done again, and it's just been incredible given the circumstances that you've been handed. So we all look forward to hearing your report.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the humor that the board brings to the table routinely, particularly this year. I feel like we've had a lot of very serious conversations, but also had a lot of good laughs, often in the midst of those serious conversations. And as all of you know, it's a gift to feel supported by your board and working in tandem with them as opposed to fighting against them. And so every day I am also grateful for that. This is definitely not how I anticipated giving my second president's report, particularly since the first president's report, I had no idea what I was talking about. And I was about 2.5, 3 months into the job. And little did I know that this year would have some particularly exciting curveballs. So I want to start with accreditation, which is what Jackie reported on. Jackie is the chair of our accreditation committee, which is no small tasks. And I just want to note that in half of a year last year, we did almost as many accreditation visits as we did the whole year before. Last year was actually set up to be kind of a bumper year for accreditation visits. You can see this is sort of how it shakes out over time, and it sort of reflects the growth of our association. And this was really actually what we were worried about. If we just pushed everything forward a semester or two and didn't move everybody, we were going to run into some interesting logistical challenges, and probably everybody on this call would find themselves on more accreditation visits than you'd ever thought to engage in the next decade. So this is sort of where we've ended up, but in some ways, you know, I was looking for the silver lining. It actually helps us sort of spread out some of the visits a little bit, just with one thing or another. And so this gives our staff a little bit of an ability to sort of spread the visits out some, so that they're a little bit more, I don't know, evenly distributed across the spectrum. Joanne, as many of you know, runs our accreditation process incredibly well. And she and Carol are great at organizing so many team visits, but we're looking forward to getting these a little bit more evenly distributed across our calendar and across our visits. So that's exciting for us. We will start with virtual visits this spring, particularly when we do co-accreditation. We're working with other associations, and people are trying not to push accreditation too far down the road, because it's going to get much more complicated for people, and the states start having specific requirements as well. Our surveys have been going strong up until the pandemic. They were cruising along, and Sherry happily got the betas out on these 3 different little surveys that we have for schools. And schools are picking up the value narrative surveys again. I've been so impressed with all of you as you realize that COVID, while certainly a huge part of this year, can't be the only thing this year. And so a lot of schools are moving forward with strategic planning and, you know, getting into net promoter scores and value narrative surveys. And so that's an encouraging sign. And, you know, we've continued to do that. Of course, unbeknownst to us, you know, we had a couple little surveys that we had planned. You know, we did a big benefits survey. And then bam, suddenly we found ourselves doing a lot of different little pulse surveys. We have one going right now on giving and payment for substitute teachers. But as many of you know, we've done a bunch of mini surveys throughout the course of the pandemic. And many kudos to Sherry for bearing a lot of the weight of getting those out and helping us really think about what those results look like and what they mean for our schools. And thank you all for participating in them. I know surveys right now are sort of death by 1,000 cuts. I think everybody is doing little surveys, and they're all sort of variations on the theme, but I think they've also been really helpful as schools have been planning ahead. Last year, we announced our partnership with Authentic Connections and around student well-being, and little did we know how helpful that partnership was going to be going into this year. They've done an incredible amount of work around not just student well-being, but also staff well-being throughout the pandemic. They're speaking at the annual conference next week, Nina and Sunya, and you know, it's just probably not the partnership that we thought we were going to have, but I think it's also been very fruitful for our schools and our association, and we just really value their insights that they've brought to the table. So that partnership has continued to go well. 2020 professional development it started off fairly normally. You know, we had a winter conference, everybody was together, it was a very happy time. You know, over 300 people together, one conference space, things that we couldn't even imagine happening right now. If you notice, the academic support conference with almost 250 people continues to be sort of a surprise to us in a lot of ways, how many people have really been interested in that conference. And we end up with schools from all over the United States participating. And then suddenly we had the great shift to online. And my hat is off to our staff and how quickly everyone moved to really jump on the moments where we really needed to pull the community together and just talk about what's happening. And I will say for SAIS, this has been particularly interesting because when you look at our schools, I think within our region, within our membership, we are probably the most back in person, and everybody's got variations on the theme of what that looks like. But I think it's been helpful for this community to come together because other parts of the country didn't end up in the same place. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think it's helped for schools that were all, you know, aiming to go back on campus to be able to communicate as readily as we did. We've created 15 virtual roundtable groups. Before March, you may or may not even remember this, we've all spent so much time looking at each other in Brady Bunch land. We didn't have virtual roundtables. We didn't meet like this. And the heads, we used to meet every week. Now we're the only group that meets every other week, and everybody else is doing about once a month. But we have 15 virtual roundtable groups, and we've added groups being served, diversity practitioners, admissions, and advancement. These are 3 groups that we've done. We've probably done more for diversity practitioners than the other 2, but we've added roundtables there and have provided more services to them. All told, since this started, we've held 124 virtual roundtables. And when you look at everybody in attendance each time, it comes up to almost 4,300 people participating in those virtual roundtables. And I throw in the 2019 webinars because we were just so proud of ourselves. We held 3 webinars in 2019 with 289 attendees. And then, of course, come March, suddenly we really had to kick it into gear. And so we've had 54 webinars with a total of 10,078 attendees. Our average webinar attendance is almost 200. And it's really given us an opportunity to get some really good partnerships going and start experimenting with this, which is what we've sort of wanted to talk about doing anyway. Leadership and Design put on a great course around teaching to the election. This was specifically geared towards educators. We did a partnership with Google and Google in the Classroom. Michael Thompson and Rob Evans, when we had to cancel the event we usually do with them in the spring for school leaders and spouses, we worked with them to pull together these support groups. Many of you are aware we did the Preparing for the Election with ISAS and NWAIS. And then, of course, Schools on the Brink, which we did early on as a panel, and just invited any association to add their brand to give the event lift. We ended up with almost 2,000 attendees, and I think we ended up with 2,700 people registered for that event. So our online experience has been very full. We did do a virtual summer conference, which was our first conference online like that. And then next week, obviously, we've got the annual conference, which we're very, very excited about. Just to give you an idea of how quaint we were, this is the plan for webinars for last academic year. And again, we ended up quite a bit beyond this. And then we had the great shift online around the resources as well. Our COVID 2019 page and beyond, which Abby has done just Sisyphean efforts to keep those together, to just keep pushing on getting the resources out there. We've got over 500, I bet it's probably more like 600 resources online. I've created this Friday missive that lands like a brick in all of your emails every Friday afternoon. And we have just a lot more SAIS created and branded resources to help our schools as well. And then hats off to all of you for offering up the samples and examples from across all of our schools, which I know schools have found so incredibly helpful. You know, it's always nice to talk to people who have a lot of theories about things, but it's really good to see what other people have put into practice and learn from what they've done. So that was a massive push for us. In case you're curious, these are the most popular pages on our website. I shared this with the board in September. I'm always kind of curious about, you know, what are people looking at online? What we all love is that Clay's article on Zoom breakout rooms was one of the top ones because people had never actually used breakout rooms in Zoom. And you can see Independent Schools on the Brink remains one of our top viewing pages. Another just sort of interesting data point, we track use over time, and the job postings, understandably were very down this spring. I think none of us had any idea what might happen. And then we saw an uptick this summer, and I think we'll continue to see an uptick. As many of you know, we've been working with Selected to help schools have different recruiting avenues, and schools are thinking a lot more about recruiting and retention of staff, particularly right now. And so that's something we'll continue to work on, but I thought you might be interested in seeing what this trend looked like. So what didn't happen? The April leadership retreat, we called that off from in-person, and that was supposed to be in Chattanooga along with the April board meeting. We sort of pushed all of that forward a year, and so we have our leadership retreat dates in Chattanooga for this April. We have not decided yet whether that will be an in-person event or not, but that's one of the things we're looking at. We brought our June events online and really combined them into one virtual summer conference. We did cancel a couple of them, but that actually ended up being a really interesting experience. A lot of people reported that, the timing of that often doesn't work for them in terms of being with their family, but with it being virtual, they could actually really participate in a way they'd never been able to before. And the recasting of it as more of a summer conference based more around student experience and learning and teaching brought in a lot of different roles that we didn't anticipate. And so that's a change that we might continue going forward and doing a different kind of conference in the summer, potentially just with different cohorts or different groups. And then obviously our in-person annual conference. We spent a lot of time thinking about that, knowing some other associations had gone forward with in-person events. But our event is big enough that it really presents some challenges to try to do that in person and online and keep people socially distanced. So what can you see next for 2021 coming up? The SAIS board has launched an SAIS Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. Our invitations went back Friday, and I'm happy to say that I received all affirmative responses from folks. You will see an SAIS member satisfaction needs assessment survey that will come to you, I would venture to say, either November or December. And then we're doing a ton of work. It's sort of deferred maintenance on the back end. Much credit to our tech director, Clay, who is absolutely the calm during the eye of the storm and just managing all of our technology beautifully. But essentially, we are replacing everything on the back end. And then while we're at it, we thought we'd do a brand refresh and refresh some of our colors because, it's kind of like a bathroom renovation. Why not? And so you'll be seeing a lot of those technological changes on the back end. And then we're looking forward to holding our first diversity practitioner mini conference in February, which we're very excited about. And then we're in talks to potentially put on a leadership conference in conjunction with another association, potentially also this spring. And we're looking forward, frankly, to being back in person. We've loved the engagement and the involvement with our schools online, but we also know that people are excited to actually see each other again, which would be, just a gift in whatever way we can figure that out. For the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, these are the members of our task force. The task force will be broken into 3 different committees. The first committee is going to look at sort of where are our schools? Where do we look like on the journey of diversity, equity, and inclusion among our schools? The second group is going to look at what's the most helpful kind of support that can be offered to schools as they're in sort of each of these different phases. And then the third group will really be looking at our accreditation standards in light of what the first 2 groups figure out, but also looking at other accrediting standards from around the country. So really thankful that everybody here is willing to serve and looking forward to getting that work underway. The EE Forward project, the HEADS database, SAIS was asked to partner, not sure it's really partner, to sort of implement a project that's of interest to EE Forward, and it's pulling together a database of HEADS across the United States. We'll be at home with SAIS. We're working with a contractor. We did get a grant for it. I think it's $170,000. And basically it's a database going back to the 90s, looking at which consultant placed the head, when they were placed, where they came from, which consultant within the consultant, different consultant groups were there. And you'll be able to actually search and kind of go back and, and look at the history both from schools and consultants' vantage point. So that's just getting started underway, but I wanted you to know that that was coming. And it's a pretty interesting and more complex than you would think project, but we're looking forward to digging into that. And I mentioned at my address last fall, we talked about the goals study. So when you go through accreditation and you submit your information around your strategic plan and goals, we really dug into those goals to try to bucket them to say, okay, where do schools need the most support? So if accreditation's got standards and criteria, what support do we provide there? But then also, what are schools telling us they're really focusing on, and then how can we support that work as well? And so when we launch the new website, you'll see us start to build out some more support resources, provide more professional development around the standards and criteria, but also around the school study. So that's going to be a work in progress for a long time. It'll probably be a never-ending work in progress, but it's giving structure to our work and how we're thinking about what we're doing. So you'll see and hear more about that in the future. So what can you do? Provide feedback. If we're doing things that are really helpful, tell us that. If we're doing nothing that's helpful, tell us that too. If there are things that you see that we should be thinking about or that you think would be really helpful, let us know. We have the gift of being a very nimble staff and a very responsive staff. So we're always happy to hear suggestions, because some things we just didn't think about, frankly, and we're happy to jump on it. Let us know about great resources. Those Friday emails that I send out, I read a lot, but then I also get them from other people. There are some times when the CDC launches new advisories and things, and I think there's like a foot race out there to see who can send it to me first, and I love that. I think it's really funny. And so please do send out resources that you come across that are useful to you or might be useful or entertaining to other people. And really participate thoroughly and thoughtfully in the accreditation process. If we're looking at goals and strategic plans to help us drive the work to support schools, then really make sure that those things reflect where you need support and where your interests lie. And then finally, attend the annual conference. We have over 400 registrants. We've got 26 sponsors, which is more sponsors, frankly, than we've ever had before. We have 6 major speaker sessions. And I have to say, these are not speakers I can pull off all together in one physical conference. And that was kind of my thinking, like, if we're gonna all be online, then let's listen to some people that I can't get together in one place at another point in time. And so they're gonna be really interesting conversations. And then we've got 11 workshops on top of that. Once you register, then you can have access to all of the recordings and things for this too. And we're gonna use cohort community groups. We're going to use those conversations to basically provide a report out on those major speaker sessions, so that we have, basically an association report and reflection on what we heard. So really look at that speaker list and think about what questions you want to hear them answer. I was on my walk. I walk the dog a lot, as many of you know, and listening to Michael Horn and Jeff Slingo actually have a podcast together called Future You. And really thinking about what I wanted to talk to them about, what we wanted to hear about. So save them so you can submit them yourselves or send questions directly to me. And we will be doing a happy hour. Please join that. There's no agenda. We'll be doing some breakouts. We'll likely be rotating, and that'll be fun too. And it'll keep our sponsors from getting agitated. Just as a reminder, here are our major speakers for this event. And I've been kind of touching base with all of these people over the last week or so, and it's going to be an interesting, rip-roaring time. Everybody should go and Google Swanee and see what's been happening up there over the last couple of months. Ruben told me the other day that he now has enough material from the last 4 months to write a trilogy memoir. He's barely got his foot in the door, so I'm really looking forward to that. Anna would kick me under the table if I forgot to share this, so I do want to thank our sponsors. We have totally new sponsors this year. We have some people who were friends for a long time and definitely will not be sponsoring online events this year. And then we've got some that have really hung with us and new sponsors that have come forward. So these are our gold sponsors. You'll see them attached to several of the speakers and things next week. We have our silver sponsors. I was so glad to see Authentic Connections, obviously one of our partners, but also a sponsor for our conference. And then our bronze sponsors as well. And, and this is where we're starting to see, new groups come into play and really supporting the work that the association is doing. And as well as our support sponsors saying. So we're really excited to see that that we've had this support. We weren't sure what this was going to look like, particularly because we're not doing a virtual exhibit hall. We weren't sure how that was going to work, and we felt like if we had provided it, it might end up being the worst of all possible worlds. So we did not go down that road. And but thank you all for thinking about the annual conference and registering if you don't. And in a second, I'm going to turn it over to Lori because she is going to provide our prizes for today. I'm hoping we can always do prizes at the annual business meeting. But the last time I did my president's report, I actually introduced Tim Fish before I finished. And I will say at the next roundtable, Tim Fish is going to join the heads roundtable. So if you'd like to come and join that conversation. I find Tim just so incredibly optimistic all the time. I keep waiting for somebody to just take the wind out of that guy's sails, and it just never happens. So it struck me that he would be a great person to come to our next roundtable. So thank you all for listening to this report. It has been an exhilarating year. It's been an exhausting year, but I think one that we can really be proud of as an association. And just we thank you for your participation and your support. So with that, Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can try the prize wheel. Have you got it?
Okay, let's do it. Okay, can everyone see the prize wheel? So we have entered your names into this random prize generator here. I think I have the most fun part of the annual business meeting. And we are going to let it draw 3 names for us. So the first one will be for a $100 SAIS gift card. So let me roll the wheel here.
Has sound effects and everything.
I know, it's so exciting. Right. Ed Ellison.
Way to go. I'm loving this game.
You are the winner of a $100 SAIS gift card.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, congratulations. We're going to remove your name for the next drawing. The next drawing is for a $50 Amazon gift card. And here we go. All right, Dana Dion is the winner of the $50 Amazon gift card. Congratulations.
Woo, thank you.
You are so welcome. All right, and taking your name out. And finally, we have a Halloween cookie pack that will be delivered to your school from Cheryl's Cookies. And here we go. Penny Evans. We'll be sending you some cookies.
I will share.
Awesome. There we go. And there are your door prizes for the annual business meeting. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Deborah, for an incredible report. You know, when we look back on the year and you give the summary the way you did, you certainly wouldn't, no one would think you had been here 2 or 3 months. They would think you had been here years working on and setting up that 1 year. You've just done a phenomenal job, and your team has worked tirelessly to support you and SAIS, and we thank all of you for that. Before we close the annual business meeting and adjourn, I do want to recognize all of the comments that were in the comment box that supports all the SAIS employees, and know that the work that we all have ahead, both in supporting SAIS and having SAIS help support us, is crucial. That partnership really does help this organization thrive. the feedback that you provide to Deborah and to Lori and to the team really does help them determine the direction to take the organization. And so your feedback is important. Continue to give that. Continue to tell us where we can get better. And SAIS will continue to put the work in that they've put in to support all of our schools. Deborah, do you have anything else before I adjourn the meeting?
Nope, just everybody stay on, because then we get into the really exciting stuff about infectious diseases. It's going to be great.
Sounds good. And you know, the business meeting should, I don't know that we should end it with a little spinning wheel, Lori. That may be the way we need to begin the meeting, so people start off in a really happy mood instead of hearing all of the rest first. But thank you. Thanks to everyone. All right.
Thank you.